way. Yes, up the stairs. Yeah, yeah. Good afternoon, good evening. This is another Rush Hour concert from the International Music Foundation. I'm Robbie Ellis, and my guest opposite me needs no introduction for a lot of you, but for those of you who are unfamiliar, Alex Klein is an oboist. He was principal oboe of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra on a couple of occasions. He still teaches at DePaul University and is now the principal oboe of the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra. Busy chamber musician, a busy teacher, artistic director of a festival or two, and very glad to have you in Chicago. How are you, Alex?
Thank you. Good to be back home.
Yes. Well, you have many homes, I'm sure. Yeah.
Chicago will always be home.
Lovely, lovely. Well, speaking of home, I mean, home is where you ride out your pandemic in, is one way to put it. Where were you in Calgary? Were you here? What was there?
I was in Canada.
Yeah.
Yes.
Travel between the two countries is a little bit easier now. I'll tell you, I just got married about a month ago, and one of my wife's bridesmaids lives in Calgary. Had to travel here. Had to quarantine in a hotel 3 days on the way back, and then at home another 11 days.
It's still a little bit tricky, but I'm glad overall we are beginning to ride away from this pandemic.
Yeah, seems to be. Ready. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So you're here to play 4 different pieces. Some American music, there's something by Pavel Hindemith, and also Pavel Haas, a composer whose life was unfortunately cut short. Let's talk about this music. So William Grant Still, his Incantation and Dance. Have you played much of Still's music before?
This is my very first time.
Yeah. Has written a fair bit that includes oboe, at least some of his folk song suites. What can we expect in the Incantation and Dance?
Well, it is a jewel. William Grant Still himself is a jewel. He and I went to the same school, to the Oberlin Conservatory of Music. And
he's a little bit older, right?
A little bit.
Yeah.
And we're all rushing to find diverse repertoire. And often we are forced to borrow. So if somebody wrote something for violin, I'm going to go there and grab it. So we're fortunate that William Grant Still wrote this piece for oboe and piano. It's an original. And it has characteristics of American music and that we know are tied to African American contributions to American music. So every now and then he has a certain Afro-American appeal that is really beautiful for us to discover.
Beautiful. For the second week in a row in Rush Hour concerts, we have the work of Augusta Reed Thomas on the program. And you're going to be playing her Song Without Words, which is based on a song called Your Kiss, which was written for soprano with words, but I think same melody on oboe without words. What can we expect from?
Well, Augusta's music is peaceful. It's sort of the music that we sit and we allow it to take over. It's almost spiritual. And for me, it's a particular pleasure because back when I was in the Chicago Symphony with Barenboim, Augusta was our composer in residence. So we did a lot of her premieres and worked with her and followed her guidance as we developed new music. Pierre Boulez was around as well. So this is a little bit of a homecoming for me to play Augusta's music.
And now we get to a couple of pieces for which this concert might be a bit of a rehearsal for next week. Alex Klein is producing another album of oboe music and some great discoveries, which, well, some better known, some lesser known pieces. Do you want to talk about the album that you're about to go and produce? 6 different composers who are connected in very interesting ways.
Well, the title will be When There Are No Words. They're revolutionary works created when composers were dealing with very tough personal circumstances. So 2 of them were exiled from their countries. 2 other works are anti-war in nature. One of them succeeded because it's preventing World War III, and so far, knock on wood, we haven't hit that one yet. And the other one by Britain, he did not succeed. He wrote it in 1936, and in 3 years we had World War II. And the final 2 that we're going to perform now are works that are tied with the fascism in Germany. Hindemith was able to leave and escape to Switzerland with his family. Pavel Haas could not. So he actually divorced his wife, so she and their daughter could escape them because they were not Jewish. And since he was Jewish, he was not allowed to leave. And he knew the cards stacked against him. So he wrote this suite for voice and piano with a text that was nationalistic, instead of saying, we're going to beat these guys. And then he decided to destroy that text and rework the piece for oboe and piano so that he wouldn't get caught with those words in his hands.
So this is the last of the 4 pieces we'll hear today. It's the Suite for Oboe and Piano by Pavel Haas. And it really begins quite defiantly, quite angrily, but then settles into something in the last movement that I hear something life-affirming in the last movement.
It is spiritual in nature. I see it, the last movement, as him speaking from the post-life and sort of teaching us a lesson that not all of our fights in life need to be finished while we are here, that our legacy sometimes will finish the work for us. So we hear bells, essentially. We're representing bells. And sort of like a message that comes from the afterlife, saying that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, Pavel Haas wrote it in occupied Czechoslovakia in 1939, and a couple of years later was sent to Theresienstadt, which is sort of the Nazi Germany's, we're going to show the world that we're treating Jews humanely here, artist colony, and then he was sent on to Auschwitz and met his death in the Holocaust, but at least this piece of music lives on. The Paul Hindemith, which you're also recording for your album, which is, remind me, called When There Are No Words?
Correct.
Right, I got that. Paul Hindemith, this is probably maybe the best known of the pieces that you're putting on the album. His Oboe Sonata, quite light, breezy work in the first movement. But as you mentioned, he composed it the same year that he was basically forced into exile in Switzerland. So he was sort of the opposite of Pavel Haas. Pavel Haas was Jewish, his wife was not. Hindemith was not Jewish, and his wife was. So that caused him political troubles. Can you describe the Hindemith? I'm sure you've played it many times from early in your career as well.
Well, it would be impossible for Hindemith to put a program to this and let us know, oh, this is about the Nazis, because they're very ugly here, because for the same reason that Pavel had to destroy his text, right? So what I humbly see in his 2 movements is that one of them, first one, is what he saw around him. Energy, driving force of fascism, of trying to create a narrative, and that never really gets a conclusion. So it doesn't end, the movement fizzles. And then the second movement sort of reminds us of what Germany could be at the time, remembering philosophy, remembering poetry, remembering Beethoven's structure, Bach fugues, Wagnerian phrases, and a look for inner beauty. So again, there is no text, and there wouldn't be any text representing this. But as a performer, this is humbly the impression that I get from working on this piece.
Lastly, as a performer, you've had a little bit of trouble with focal dystonia, medical condition that basically means your hands don't communicate with your brain quite so much. You had it. You've been working through it. How is it now for you as a performing musician?
Well, I'm in constant transition. It's been 20 years since I got it, and I've been constantly finding new ways of dealing with it. It used to be that focal dystonia is something that a few rare musicians had, Leon Fleischer and Gary Graffman. It was a spotty thing, and we were sort of detached from it. And that ends up not being very good for us. We decided to be more vocal about it. Today, there are thousands of musicians who came out of the closet, and we're all together looking for better understanding and to also make our appeal to employers, to colleagues, in that we're not freaks, we're not monsters, we're not invalids. We have a situation that we're trying to understand. Not even doctors can tell us how do we get it, so we can go and tell everybody, don't do that, right? So there are still a lot of mysteries in it, but one thing we know for sure, that when we talk about it, when we bring awareness, it helps everybody, those who have focal dystonia and those who don't, and we want them to understand us and accept us.
Well, Alex Klein, it is from someone with one authentic Chicago accent to someone with another authentic Chicago accent. It's lovely to have you home. I'm very much looking forward to this concert. Just a quick note, next week's Rush Hour concert will be, love this group, the Kaya String Quartet. There'll be a world premiere by Chicago Uruguayan man of the world, Elbio Barilari, as well as music from Mexico and Argentina and Italy. And at 5:45, in 10 minutes or so, we can enjoy Alex Klein and Lillia Woolschlager. So please give your appreciation for Alex Klein.
Thank you, sir. Yes, lovely.
At St. James Cathedral in Chicago. I'm Robbie Ellis. This concert is presented by the International Music Foundation, which is grateful for support from the Claire, Rush Hour Concert's exclusive media sponsor, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Illinois Arts Council. For the second week in a row, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of composer Augusta Reed Thomas, whose music you'll hear alongside that of William Grant Still, Pavel Hindemith, and Pavel Haas. Now please welcome today's musicians, oboist Alex Klein and pianist Lillia Woolschlager.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good late afternoon. Pleasure to see all of you here. Thank you for bracing the pandemic and joining us. And for everyone who is listening to us online, hello. It's difficult for us to imagine that only a few decades ago, there would be refugees leaving Central Europe. Paul Hindemith was one of them. He was an immigrant. So I do realize that immigration is a hot topic of discussion. Hopefully not the immigrant. In order to be an immigrant, Paul Hindemith had to leave everything behind. Home, roots, and just flee, hoping for a better life somewhere else, starting over. So we would like to dedicate this performance to the Rohingya, to the Malaysians, to the Venezuelans, to the Guatemalans, El Salvadorians, and Hondurans who are packing down your southern border in the same situation as Paul Hindemith. They just want a new start for whatever reason. For Hindemith, it was fascism. And talking about fascism, we will then play for you the suite by Pavel Haas, which breaks my heart. And it is an unwinnable fight, but he decided to fight it anyway. First movement is about the confusion. What's all this? Second movement is when he realizes this is his demise, fighting the fascists and Nazis. And in the third movement, he tells us something important that we would like to dedicate to all of those who fight unwinnable fights, be it for disease, for employment, or for injustices, that we're going to fight that good fight no matter what, even beyond our lifetimes, like he did. Enjoy.